All right, good morning and welcome to Fire Smoke Safety offered by the State Office of Risk Management. My name is Seth Ford. This special presentation is based on guidance that was developed in consultation with experts from the Colorado School of Public Health, the Department of Local Affairs, the Department of Public Health and Environment, the Department of Public Safety, and the Department of Natural Resources, as well as the Department of Personnel and Administration. We want to thank Dr. Mike Van Dyke, Associate Professor, School of Public Health, Dr. Lee S. Newman, Professor at the School of Public Health, Anna Cargobai Murray, Benefits and Wellness Administrator at DNR, and Daniel McKenna, Total Worker Health Coordinator, CDPHE, Boyd LaBeta, Environmental Protection Specialist at CDPHE, Clay Brown, Regional Manager, DOLA, Trevor Denny, Field Services Manager, CDPS, David Vitwar, Branch Chief of Operations at CDPS as well. Co-hosting with me this morning is Brian Brickey, SORM Safety Specialist. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. If you are unfamiliar with Zoom, you can find chat, Q&A, and raise hand features by scrolling over the bottom of your screen. We'll ask participants to enter questions into the Q&A for answers at the end of the presentation. If you wish to ask the question live at the end of the training, please still enter the question in Q&A, but raise your hand. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available at the safety training page of SORM's website within 3 days. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Brian Brickey. Thank you very much and enjoy the show.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As we all know, last year's wildfire season was unprecedented across the Western United States. So in Colorado, we saw more than 1,000 separate wildfires that burned an estimated 625,000 acres and cost more than $250 million to suppress. While 2 Coloradoans lost their lives as a direct result of the fires, more broadly, it's estimated that fires in other states and Colorado burned more than 4 million hectares, costing nearly $20 billion, destroying almost 14,000 structures, and indirectly costing between 1,200 and 3,000 deaths from smoke inhalation. So in fact, smoke concentrations last year were measured at 77% greater than they were in 2019. So in short, wildfires are horrible events, but smoke from wildfires is a real and persistent risk for state employees. While smoke levels will continue to fluctuate year over year, on average, they will continue to rise in concentration. Guidance is needed to ensure that employees are protected, but especially employees working outdoors. So before we get too deep, we need to do a quick review of workers' compensation requirements when dealing with wildfire smoke events. The short and long-term effects of wildfire smoke aren't always immediately obvious. So if you believe you have suffered a work-related injury or illness, including an aggravation of a pre-existing condition while working outdoors during wildfire smoke events, you may be entitled to workers' compensation benefits. So the faster you act when you find that you've suffered an injury or an illness that may be caused by wildfire smoke, the better your workers' compensation administrator will be able to help you. Talk to your supervisor if you're unsure how to report an incident or file a claim. While your immediate supervisor is preferred, you should contact any other supervisor available if you can't reach your own. So once you report an incident, you'll be provided with a designated provider list. You can select any doctor from that list. It's important that you don't just go to your own doctor unless they are on that list. And finally, and most importantly, if you believe you are in imminent danger from a life-threatening emergency, we need to dial 911. So now that we've covered some basic procedure, let's go over some of the health risks of wildfire smoke. Generally, smoke irritates your respiratory system. This can cause a range of immune responses that can include inflammation of other parts of your body outside of your respiratory system. So common symptoms might include eye irritation, runny nose, sore throat, mild cough, maybe you're coughing up phlegm, you're wheezing, and there may be headaches involved. And while everyone is at risk of serious harm from smoke inhalation, there are groups that are more sensitive than others. Of course, pre-existing conditions like heart or lung disease can be exacerbated by even mild smoke inhalation. This might include people with asthma, COPD, lung cancer, disease of the arteries, and other conditions like that. People with diabetes, including type 1 and type 2, and pregnant women with GDM, everyone can be affected, but older adults are particularly susceptible. And while older adult is officially defined as 65, we become more susceptible as we age. And finally, kids under 18 who are still developing, and that healthy development can be impacted by severe smoke inhalation. So safety controls and definitions, let's do a little bit of an overview. So throughout the rest of the presentation, we're going to be using terms that you may not be familiar with. Safety controls are any process, practice, or system designed to reduce risk. Particulate matter, or PM 2.5, is a scientific way of referring to smoke. The Air Quality Index is the EPA's official yardstick for measuring air pollution, including PM 2.5. While you might know generally what an HVAC system is, it's helpful to know that the acronym stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. It's a kind of all of the above reference to any system designed to push or pull air through a building or an enclosed area. MERV is the minimum efficiency reporting value, and that's a rating given to various air filters offered by HVAC systems. The higher the MERV rating, the more pollution is removed from the air when it is on. Finally, the CADR is another important term for HVAC systems that refers to the rate at which the system pushes or pulls air through an enclosed area. This, of course, impacts volume of pollution in the air that is around you. So let's go over a few different types of safety controls. If we break them down, there are several different types. The first two are emergency and engineering controls. Emergency controls are just what they sound like. They are protocols for responding to an emergency. Rescue plans if someone is trapped or lost. Evacuation plans. How are we going to get the people away from an affected area by smoke? While ideally we want to remove people from the danger when we can, smoke sometimes makes that difficult. So sometimes the best option is to seek engineered shelter. If we can get away from the affected area, it makes sense to try to close ourselves off from it using a building, preferably something with an adequate HVAC system. Administrative and respiratory controls. Well, hopefully we aren't sending people into areas we know that is affected by wildfire smoke. But if smoke blows in or we get to a site and find that it is impacted, we can do a few things to minimize exposure to that smoke. First off, we can relocate teams to an area we know isn't affected. So if we have to go into an area that is likely to be overwhelmed by smoke, we can shorten individual or team exposures by reducing schedules, assigning them to performing lighter workloads, and finally providing respirators for use when the AQI, the Air Quality Index, is over 151. And we're going to learn more about that here in just a second. So air quality monitoring. These are tools to keep your team safe. Both CDPHE and AirNow provide regularly updated air quality readings. These can be assessed at the links in the presentation. Seth is going to go ahead and post those in the chat for you. AQI is subdivided into levels. These levels are read within tolerances. 0 to 50 is good air quality. 51 to 100 is moderate air quality. 101 to 150 is unhealthy for sensitive groups. At 151 to 200, it is considered unhealthy for everyone. Respirators are recommended when air quality is above 151. AQI of 201 to 300 is very unhealthy, and at 301 to 500, we better be evacuating our employees ourselves or seeking shelter. So as you use and become familiar with CDPHE and AirNow's online air quality resources, you'll notice that some areas of Colorado are better covered than others. Well, there just aren't enough monitors set up to completely cover the entire state with pinpoint accuracy. So if available, you can supplement public air quality readings with a direct particulate monitor. When evaluating a site, you should also look for and identify enclosed, accessible structures in which you and your team can take shelter if needed. Ideally, the structures you identify should be equipped with an HVAC system. Some filtration is better than none. So it's helpful to identify vehicles that can be used for shelter as well. Finally, develop an evacuation plan with your supervisor and team in case administrative and engineering controls fail. So speaking a little bit more to direct particulate monitors, we do realize that not many agencies and units have these right now. So if it's within your agency's budget, you may want to consider purchasing one. Using a direct particulate monitor is a good spot check for the area you are actually working in. You may not always have access to the internet or work site, and occasionally checking the air quality with a DPM can give you real-time data that will help you gauge what kind of controls you need to implement and when and what to communicate with your team about conditions on the ground. If you do decide to purchase a DPM, EPA provides SOPs for several. Seth's going to drop those links in the chat as well. So to read air quality index from a DPM, you also need to understand what you're looking at. DPMs generally measure PM 2.5 in micrograms per cubic meter. Now that won't necessarily mean anything to you if you can't convert to an AQI. So this table provides us that conversions as well as with the corresponding levels of good, moderate, unhealthy for sensitive groups, unhealthy, very unhealthy, and hazardous. So you can use this chart when making those calculations or instead of making those calculations. So we've mentioned building and HVACs and filtration. Let's get into that a little bit more. So while most of our guidance is geared towards people working in the field, we do recognize that with a 77% increase in smoke over Colorado last summer, virtually everywhere could be considered the field. No matter where you work, it is worth asking whether the building you are working in is equipped with the appropriate HVAC systems. Research shows that filtration can be effective as a supplement to source control. That means if you can't put the fire out and stop smoke pollution at the source, filtration might be the next best thing. While even the best filters can only reduce and cannot eliminate pollutants, it's still worth thinking about. You might also want to consider further supplementing your HVAC system with a portable high-efficiency air purifier with a high CADR rating. And while some filtration is better than no filtration, it doesn't mean that all HVAC systems will fully protect you. Filtration is only as good as your ability to control it. If you can't close the air intake and recirculate air, the system will still let smoke in. Filters rated to a MERV 13 and above will effectively filter out PM 2.5. But if entrances and exits, including windows, can't be shut, then the filter won't really matter. So if your agency has the resources, a portable air cleaner might be something that you want to purchase. You generally can't take an HVAC system into the field with you, but you can make the HVAC system in the field a little bit better. So it's important to understand that portable air cleaners are only as good as the size of the room where you take shelter. The table in this slide gives you a good idea of how large a room each CADR rated portable air cleaner will clean. Now let's talk about respirators. If your team is using a respirator to filter smoke, either you must go into an area that is unhealthy or you're overwhelmed by unexpected and poor air quality. If you're issuing and using respirators, use only respirators that are approved by the National Institute of Occupational Health, or NIOSH. There are 10 classes of NIOSH approved particulate filtering respirators. 95% filtration is the minimal level approved by NIOSH. The respirators listed here are those you should consider procuring. So we have here the filter class in the description and how much of the pollutant that they will filter out. The Occupational Health and Safety Administration, or OSHA, recommends the use of respirators to protect the health of employees from harmful dust, fogs, fumes, mists, gases, smoke sprays, or vapors. The standard applies to all occupational airborne exposures to contamination of air. If you know as an employee or supervisor that you or your team will be exposed to hazardous levels of smoke, it's important to be prepared. So wearing a respirator looks easy, but how many times do you wake up and say, I better shave today in case I have to put my respirator on? The point is this: respirators only work when you use them the right way. Otherwise, they may just offer us a false sense of security. If you can't follow these instructions, then don't rely on respirators. Use other safety controls first. And here is an example of how you place a filtering respirator onto yourself. Action planning. So, okay, we've covered a lot, and it's time to get started on our AQI action plan. So answers to these questions are the minimum preparation you should undertake when you anticipate working in an unhealthy smoke conditions. So how will your team establish air quality at the work site? So will you use CDPHE, Air Now, or a DPM, or a combination of all three? If you don't have access to a DPM, do you at least have internet or cell phone service at the site you're working at? Who's going to monitor the air quality and how often? How will they report conditions to the team? Under what conditions will you evacuate? How far away should team members be from filtered or unfiltered shelter? How will you compensate if there's no filtered shelter? Where will the team regroup? Who will make the call to evacuate and why? Finally, how will you get people on your team out of harm's way? All right, just a few more slides. So this poll is anonymous. So let's give the group a quick test and see how you all stack up against smoke. So Seth, can you please post that up? Thank you. So number one, what is a MERV? Number two, what is an example of an administrative control? Number three, what is not an example of someone belonging to a sensitive group? Number four, when is a respirator use recommended for PM 2.5? What MERV rating will effectively filter particulate smoke? And finally, how effective does a respirator have to be to receive NIOSH approval?
We've still got some answers coming in, so we're going to hold on for a few seconds and just give everybody a chance to digest the poll. All right, I'm going to go over the answers really quickly. So what is a MERV? A MERV is a minimum efficiency reporting value for HVAC filtration. 95% of you got that. What is an example of an administrative control? Well, a good example of an administrative control would be scheduling work for shorter durations in an affected area. 43%, majority got that correct, so good on you. What is not an example of someone belonging to a sensitive group? Well, that would be 43-year-old triathlete. Everyone got that. When is respirator use recommended for PM 2.5? That 35% of you got that right. It was just about split there. That is an AQI of 151 or greater. And that's the unhealthy level. Number 6, how effective does a respirator have to be to receive NIOSH approval? We got 95% effective, 70% of you got that. Great job, everyone. Thank you very much, and I'll let Brian continue.
Well, that concludes our presentation on fire smoke safety. Seth and I will both try to answer any questions you may have in the order they were received. If we don't have an immediate answer, please send us an email and we'll work on getting one as soon as we possibly can. Points for stumpers, I guess. We may add them to our frequently asked questions document located at the website Seth is going to be dropping in the chat right now.